Hi everyone, welcome to 4 Teachers. In today's video, I'm going to teach you 7 different classroom management tips, things that I use in my own classroom that I think are really useful for getting the focus and attention of the students. If you have watched some videos on the 4 Teachers channel before, then you might realise that this setup is a little bit different for me. I'm trying really hard to record this video in a much more casual style. I'm going to try my hardest to record this once through and try not to edit too much out of it. It is really difficult to continue making these videos constantly because I do want to share my ideas, but I don't have the time to record everything properly. So hopefully this is a good way for me to still share my tips and ideas, but in a slightly more casual way. And by choosing to do this, hopefully I will be able to create a little bit more content for this channel. But I really did want to film today, and I really did want to share the ideas that I've been writing down, because these are things that I've been generating over the last 7 years, which I think is actually quite a nice way to open this video, because I am in my 7th year of teaching right now. So I thought 7 small top tips would be a nice way to sort of celebrate my teaching profession so far. Just a tiny bit of context, I currently have a year 3 class, but some of these tips I've used with older students. I've taught year 5, I've taught year 4, so I feel as though it would probably work with a lot of different year groups too. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is something that is so simple but so effective. When my students are coming to sit down on the floor, let's imagine that I'm teaching a class and I'm going to be sat down with them and we're going to be on a carpet. What I do is I count the students as they come to sit down. So for example, if 3 students come and sit down, like 1, 2, 3, I would go 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place. And even though it isn't a competition and it isn't a game to sit down first, and there's certainly no prize or reward for coming to sit down 1st or 2nd or 3rd, the students really like it. I feel like they think that they've got a medal or they've got a little prize of some sorts. And I really do have a laugh with this sometimes. So if a student sits down, I will go like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th place, well done, 5th place. And sometimes I'll throw in some weird things just to spice it up. Like I'll say 5 years old, 6 years old, and then when they get to 14, I'll say like 14 years old. And another thing that the students really seem to like is when there's about 7 or 8 that have sort of clocked on to what's happening and they're sat down and they're all ready, I start having a chat with them as if they're my tiny class. And I will sometimes say to them like, oh, you're my tiny class of students. Imagine if I only had 8 children in my class. And we just talk about it, and it's really funny and they really like it, and it's a nice way to bond with the students that are there. And what normally happens is the students that are putting their books away slowly or getting a whiteboard pen really slowly, they kind of clock on to what's happening and they really want to be part of that whole class chat, so they come and sit down a lot quicker than they would otherwise. And I think it's nicer than sitting there and shouting and being like, come on, hurry up and get your pens, come and sit down. I just feel as though it's a more positive way to collect the students all together, and you don't need to be having a go at them and doing countdowns. And I mean, I am guilty, I do countdowns sometimes, but it is much nicer just to sort of quickly count them in. And when it gets to the end, I might say, oh, 5 more children to go, 4 more children to go. And those children know who they are and they sort of hurry up and they sit down a lot quicker. This entire process might only last 1 minute, 2 minutes, if that. And I know there's probably much faster ways to get your students to come and sit down on the floor, involving positive and negative reinforcement, I suppose. But for me, I quite like that time, and I don't do it every time. So maybe it makes it quite special when they come to sit down. And there's always that child that sparkles when you say 1st place and they're like, I didn't realise I sat down 1st, but now I do and I feel really good. And I think it's just a nice bonding experience, and it actually, in practice, it looks a lot faster than I'm explaining it. I'm really used to doing it now. I'm just like, oh, 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place, fantastic. And you can use this for other things as well. You can use this when the students are getting their books out to write something or getting a whiteboard pen. You can just be like, oh, first place, getting your pen out, well done. And it's tiny little things like that that just make them sparkle and make them feel as though they've achieved something really wonderful, even though all they've done is just follow a simple set of instructions. And I think they really like it. So now I want you to imagine that we're still sat down, and I want to just check that the children are listening, or I might do this midway through the teach just to check that they're still focused. I will get the students to just follow basic commands. So I will say, put your hand in the air, point to a clock, point to a piece of technology, point out the window, point to a friend, point to someone who sat so nicely, point to the teacher, point to something made of wood, point to something made of glass, point to something that you think links with our current unit. And it's all very fast. It's very fast paced. They're like do, pointing around the room, and it kind of just refocuses them and gets them to sit up. And I will sometimes compliment the students that manage to do it really quickly. So I'll be like, oh, excellent, like you were the first one then, well done, congratulations. And again, maybe describing these things sounds so weird, but it's very fast paced, and it's just a good way for me to judge who's really like focusing on what I'm saying. And it's really good for behaviour management as well if you say, point to someone who's being an excellent role model, or point to someone who's sat so ready, and they can turn around and they always know which students are really engaged, and it just helps because suddenly all of them are sat nicely. If I was to say, point to someone who looks really ready for learning, and they point to themselves, that's great. Or if they point to a friend, that's nice too. And it just helps the whole class to focus and listen in. You can do this all the time. You can do this when they're at their desks. You can do this midway through a teach, just to, I would often say, you know how they always forget to put their name on the top of the work? I'll be like, point to your name on the top of the work. It just helps with tiny little things like that, and just checking that they've got the focus and attention that you need. And again, it's starting to sound like I do this for 10 minutes and it takes a really long time, but it's actually very, very quick. And I just do it when I feel the need to do it. If I sit down and I notice that the students are already ready and they're already engaged, I don't need to. So it's kind of a behaviour management strategy that's up my sleeve if I need it, but I don't need to constantly apply this. And it'll work around school as well. So if you get your students really well trained in something like this, you can use it when you're lining up outside an assembly about to go in and you need them to kind of focus quickly. You can be like, point to someone in the line who stood so beautifully, point to someone who's talking, point to, I do it from materials. I'll be like, point to something made of plastic, point to something made of glass, point to something red, blue, green, and they're like, do, red, blue, green. And every time it feels like a game, even though it isn't, and they really like it. So it's another positive behaviour management strategy that the students will really enjoy as well. And also another thing is I always make sure that I compliment the children that do it quietly. So if children start being a little silly while they do it and they start giggling or shouting or laughing, and I always make them restart, and I go, no, we're starting again, and we don't need to do it anymore now, because I've kind of reinforced that we do it sensibly, and they focus really well. So it's really nice. I wonder if I might be able to try and get a video of me doing it at some point. I could try. If that would be useful, please let me know in the comments. Next thing is, if you've got children in your class that are calling out all of the time, and it's really hard to control, especially when students are really excited to share their answers, they know the answer, they really want to tell you, and it's really hard to choose the students that you want to answer all the time, especially when there's some students that will always raise their hands, students that won't. I know there's many different techniques you can use for this. I know people use lollipop sticks and random name generators and think, pair, share with a partner, but what I've taught my students to do over the years is very much, most answers will be shared individually or through a partner, but sometimes I want all of them to answer at the same time. So I kind of teach them that if I was to ask a question and then move my hands like this, it means the whole class can answer at the same time. So they're allowed to shout out, but only when I'm in control of that situation. So I think what it does is it gives them the opportunity to answer as a group, but it also means I'm still in control and they're not breaking any class rules by interrupting or shouting out. So for example, if I was to say something like, and yesterday when we read the book that was all about, and they might go, life cycles, and I'll be like, yes, congratulations everyone. And maybe not all of them will get it right, but that's okay. It's an answer that everyone sort of knows, and it's a really good way for them to refocus. But I think you have to trust the class, and you have to trust that you can teach them this. And I will tell my children, I will literally say to them, have you ever noticed that sometimes I do this while we're teaching? What do you think that might mean? And they can tell me, they're like, oh, it means we answer all together. And I didn't even necessarily have to explicitly teach them that. They kind of understand my body language, but you can tell them explicitly. You can say, sometimes we answer by ourselves, sometimes we raise our hands, sometimes we talk through a partner, but sometimes the teacher will do this, and it means that we can all answer at the same time. And it's really good for engagement. It's really good for just waking up the ones that have kind of drifted off a little and aren't as focused. If I was trying to remind them of something important, I might say, and don't forget tomorrow, like I already told you, at 11:15 we have and then they might go, fire drill practice. And it's like, you just kind of, you know that most of them know the answer, and they've now had the opportunity to say it out loud, which means they've participated. And it doesn't always have to be an individual participation. Sometimes it's okay to have the whole class do that at the same time, and it can be really useful for things like class assembly practice, because you can say you were practicing lines with the students, you can go like that, and then suddenly this hand movement has become a universally understood symbol for we can all answer at the same time. So the next one is something that I have done for the past 3 years, but I don't currently have in my classroom at the moment, but I would get a laser pen or a laser pointer, and I use it to help the students to connect to the displays and the prompts that I have around the classroom. I don't have one right now just because I haven't had time to go and get one, but I do plan on getting one because they're very, very useful. But if you have a laser pointer that you might use for your whiteboard, so I would get the laser and I would point it somewhere the students can see, maybe on the wall, and then I would get the laser and make it travel around the room, like doodle over the top, and like spin around some things. And I think it's really funny. It's like a little character going woohoo, and it would like spin around the clock, and then it would land on a display. And then we could revisit some keywords from the display. We could revisit a lesson that we'd done previously. But because this funny little laser pointer has traveled all the way over, the students seem much more engaged in what it is, and they're all going to look. For example, if I was sat down with a class and I said to them, okay, boys and girls, I want all of you to look at the display keywords over here. It's just not that exciting, and a few of them are going to look over and be like, oh yeah, there are the keywords, very interesting. But if you've done a laser pointer and you've kind of made all their eyes travel over together, I feel like they connect with it so much better, and they really do notice what's there. And then you can travel further, so you can go on to the next lesson, or you can say, oh, where could we find some books that link with this? Travel, and you travel down to your library area. And I think, I don't know, they like the fact that the pointer sort of turns into a character almost, and the character zooms around the room, and sometimes I get it to do like naughty things, like it'll spin around the clock. And again, it sounds like I'm just wasting a ton of time with my kids, but it's all nice and it's fun, and I feel like it builds a bond and it builds a connection. If I was having a lesson observation and I really wanted the kids to look at something on the wall or use a resource, or if I was using an activity that had 4 different stations, using the laser is really quick because I can just go station 1, station 2, station 3, and all the kids will follow the laser, they will look at it properly, and it just helps to show where things are. Because if I wanted to stand up and suddenly reveal 10 keywords that were used in the previous lesson, I would have to travel over to that area, collect them before the lesson, pull them off the display, get them ready. Whereas the laser just helps the children to follow and connect with something really well. Just be careful not to get it in their eyes, obviously, that's just general safety, but and careful maybe not to let the children do it. Just keep it as something that you do, because you don't want them getting too silly with it, because then it would take away the behavior management element of it and just turn it into too much of a treat, which you don't want either. You still want to be in control. Next one, it's super quick, this one. I don't need to talk about it for long, but it is just changing the places that the students sit in quite often. Sometimes if I notice that my class are just buzzing a little more than usual and they are really having far too much fun chatting with the children they are close to, it kind of sparks something in my mind that reminds me that they've been there for too long, or this place is not suiting them very well and it's time for a mix-up. So I change the places that the students sit in quite a lot. I do lots of different style activities. So sometimes the children will be working in groups, sometimes the children will be working with a partner they've chosen, sometimes they'll be working independently, and there's just loads of different setups. I think if you sit in the same place on the same table as the same people every single day, you are going to start to wind the people up on your table. It's just the way it is. Sometimes I've just forgotten for a couple of weeks and I look and I'm like, yeah, you've been there for a while. And as soon as you have a mix-up, it's like there's a new environment and they're looking around, they're in a different place, they're with different people. Next one is something that I will do, not very often, but it is nice to do, and the students think it's absolutely hilarious. So sometimes as a teacher, I'm tired and I just don't have the voice to be doing all of these different behaviour management things, and I can't be bothered clapping, and I can't be bothered raising my hand and getting them to copy what I'm doing and pointing at things, and sometimes I'm just tired. So what I will do is I will have my interactive whiteboard open, and I will open it on a Word document or a Pages document, or just a Google Drive notepad so I can type, and I will just start typing messages to the class on the screen. And at first you'll get 1 or 2 students that will clock what you're doing, and they'll sort of laugh and they'll be like, haha, like, look, the words are on the screen. Then more and more children will clock what you're doing and they'll look over. And what I'll normally do is I'll just type like, hello students, I am really tired, I don't want to shout at you, but I've just noticed that some of the children are sat beautifully, those children are, boom, and then I'll go on to a new line and I'll just start typing some names of children. And I might even be quite silly with it, and I'll make up some names. Like I might be like, Joshua, you're sat so perfectly, well done, next line. Michael, excellent, I'm really proud of you, next line. Sally, you're amazing, sat so beautifully. And suddenly the children are looking around and they want their name to be typed on the screen for some reason, so they all suddenly start doing the right thing and looking around. And sometimes if there's a child that's still not listening or hasn't realised what we're all doing, I might type a funny message. I might just type, Tristan, I know you're not looking, I know you're not listening, I can see you. And then the children will kind of giggle, and Tristan, my imaginary student, will kind of be like, oh, what's everyone laughing at? And they'll all be like, Tristan, look, your name's on the screen. And then he'll look over, and then after you've kind of got them all focused on this weird event that's happening on the screen, which sounds like it takes ages, but actually it's really, really quick. As soon as they clock that their name is going to go up for something positive, they'll do the right thing, I promise you, and they'll find it funny, hopefully. And as soon as you've kind of got them all engaged and they're looking at the screen wondering what's going to come up next, that's a really good opportunity to request them do something. For example, you might type, okay, now you're all looking at this screen, I want you to all get into groups of 4 and get a non-fiction book. And it's just a really nice way to get them to do something that you want them to do, because they're going to continue reading the screen because they're really interested in what's going to come up next. It's a nice way to start a new session, or to start something new that you're doing, or request something of the children that isn't just you standing there telling them what to do all the time. Final tip that I've got for you is something that I have only just started using recently. It's something that I saw one of the teachers at my old school using and decided to borrow, take inspiration from, and that is movement words. And if you've used them before, then you will know how effective they are, but I am new to this, but it's really nice anyway. What I will do is, for example, if my students are going to be working in, let's say, groups of 5, and they're all at different stations, so some are at a making station, some are at a reading station, some are working independently, and what I want them to do is rotate around the classroom to reach every station by the end of the session. Instead of being like clap, 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 claps, everyone move to the next place, I will ask the children to create a movement word. And I might say, oh, like I've noticed that Clive has been sat so nicely for this whole lesson, would you like to choose the movement word? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. And I'll let them choose something silly, I don't really mind. The whole point is that it's supposed to be a little bit weird and funny, because otherwise it doesn't really work, because no one's going to be interested if the movement word is like environment. Like they'll be like, ugh. But he might choose something, I don't know. I really can't think of anything silly off the top of my head. I feel like bananas is not even funny at all, but the kids will think of something way more funny. And whatever the movement word is that he chooses, I will write up on the board, and then I tell the children to listen out for the movement word, and when they hear it, they automatically need to move to the next station. So I'll let them know where that will be, and then I don't have to remind them later on, I don't have to reinforce it later on, it's kind of already done for me. And it can be a phrase as well, it doesn't have to be one word, it could be a short phrase. And then when the children are working, I will say, I don't even need to shout, I can just say the movement word, because what will happen is a couple of children will hear it, then they'll all start saying the movement word. They'll be like, unicorn rainbow, I heard unicorn rainbow, and then they'll all start saying it, and then they all say it, and then every kid gets really excited to move to the next station, even though it's not an exciting thing, they just think it's exciting because there's a movement word involved. And really, it's kind of your behaviour management done for you, because they're excited to go and do some more learning, but really you've masked it. And instead of being like, come on everyone, swap places now, next table, I told you were supposed to go on to table 3 next, why weren't you listening? You've just kind of used something as simple as a movement word to get them to follow the instructions, and it works really nicely, and I'm going to continue using it. And as soon as I say to the children, I'm going to choose someone to pick a movement word, they now get super excited. And I guess you could use it for different things. You could use it as, when you hear the movement word, I want you to go and collect your maths book, or when you hear the movement word, I want you to find someone to give a compliment to. You could even bring some sort of other lessons into it as well. So you could use that in any way you want. I'm going to continue to explore that and see where my class take that with me. That's everything. I think I did a really good job of not overthinking this video. I know I always edit them and they sound really smooth, but a lot of the time I do repeat things and I make sure they sound good. And I just need to trust myself a bit more and remember that the video doesn't need to look perfect. My hair is allowed to look a mess. I'm allowed to be in my gym stuff if that's what I want. And hopefully it's a good way for me to share more information with you, because I'm human and I'm tired and I'm teaching all week, and recording on a Saturday morning is very tiring. or a Sunday morning. It's Sunday today. Any more top tips for classroom management that you've got, please consider sharing in the comments down below. The best thing you can do to help me and my channel out is to click subscribe, which is underneath the video, to share the video with any teacher friends that might find it useful, and to give the video a thumbs up would be really, really useful as well. It helps the channel to grow and it helps people to find the videos as well. Have a lovely day, everyone, and I will see you on the next video.